They don't get that you shouldn't hire a brain surgeon to do heart surgery, right? Or vice versa. I think AI is fantastic for every business. I think it's wonderful, but it should be used to supplement your own knowledge. You shouldn't be lazy and run with whatever AI is telling you to do, because it might not work for you and your specific application, right? I've been an owner's rep since really probably before the term was invented. Architects are really good at designing things. They're not really good at building things unless they have in-house construction expertise. The truth hurts sometimes, but they really don't know how to build things. You could easily miss an impact fee that's $500,000 or $700,000, and that's a pretty big impact to the project. But think about this: 1986, when I started working in this business, the highest technology item that we had at our disposal was a fax machine. There was no word processors yet. People still use typewriters. And I always say we were better at communicating then than we are today. There's a big backlog of multifamily projects that are waiting for the right financial climates to fire themselves back up.
Hey everybody, you're tuning into the Fast Track Podcast, where we sit down with builders, leaders, and creators who are rethinking how construction gets done. I'm your host, Billy Basuni, and today we are joined by Mike Cassarino. Mike has decades of experience in construction and is currently the owner and founder of Latitude 35 Solutions, who provides owner's rep work and is out of the North Carolina area. Mike, thanks for joining us today.
Hey, Billy, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Tell us more about what you do, your background, and who Latitude 35 Solutions services.
Yeah, so Latitude 35, I started about 15 years ago, and it's really a culmination of my experience in the real estate development world on the owner's side of the ledger. After graduating college in 1986 with a civil engineering degree, I went right to work for a developer in the Syracuse, New York area, and just started building stuff, which is what I always wanted to do, was just build stuff. So I've really been in real estate development on the construction side for my whole career ever since then. So it's all led to becoming an owner's rep. I'm also a licensed general contractor in the southern states, and can perform any duties that a licensed general contractor would perform. I've done some of my own development. I've developed some of my own multifamily projects, and I've also had to take over for some general contractors that were kind of not performing up to standards that the owner had set for them. So, a lot of history there, over 40 years of experiences in the construction world. I'd like to say I haven't seen it all, but I've seen most of it.
Yeah.
So the distinction for me that's very important in this realm as a owner's rep, as you know, Billy, is actually being able to wear the owner's hat. I guess I've been quote unquote an owner's rep since really probably before the term was invented, owner's rep, which is, only become sort of a mainstream, recognized profession, I guess, and maybe in the last 10 years. So coming from my background, having worked for the owner my whole career, it's a little bit of a unique perspective than another owner's rep who may have come out of the general contracting world, which I believe a lot of the guys probably are now. Not saying that they don't have the qualifications, but being able to put on that owner's hat and understand without hesitation what's the most important, for the owner, best interest of the owner, is what really kind of makes you a valuable asset, to the ownership group. So that's what I like to, say is probably my biggest attribute is ensuring that all the decisions I make are for the benefit of the owner. My fee structure is set up accordingly, right? I'm not incentivized to do anything but work in the owner's best interests.
Hmm.
I don't get paid more for this, that, or the other thing that may have an incentive that's not beneficial to the owner. I just don't think it should be set up that way. So yeah. Um,
Great. Great. Yeah. I mean, so I do want to dumb down a little bit for the audience, right? I mean, obviously, both you and I have experience in the owner's rep world, and we know what that is. But for those who don't quite fully understand what an owner's rep would do or who it would benefit, how it kind of fits into all of the, um, the whole system or like the whole project. Can you just give a quick, explanation of what owner's rep work is?
yeah, sure. An owner's rep is a guy that is hired by the ownership group as a third party consultant to man. Now I manage both design and construction.
Hmm.
Sometimes projects come to me that are already done. The design is already done. So, in that case, I would just, find the right contractor for the project and negotiate a contract. The reason it's unique is that traditionally, you know, an owner or a developer would hire an architect, and then architect would help the owner hire a general contractor. And then you've just got basically those three parties: owner, architect, general contractor. If you think about it, if you're the owner and you think about motivations, okay, you know, architects are really good at designing things. They're not really good at building things. They really don't know how to build anything, right? I mean,
Hmm.
uh, you know, the truth hurts sometimes, but they really don't know how to build things. General contractor, once they land a job, their motivation is to just wring out as much profit as they can on that job. Um, you the owner likes to depend on the architect to make sure the contractor stays in control, but the architect is not a builder. They don't know how to um, say no to a general contractor generally, or challenge their change order requests. Whereas an owner's rep comes in, and the owner's rep only has one motivation, and that's to do what's best for the owner. You know, if there's a deficiency in the drawings, for example, and the general contractor asks for a change order because there's something missing on the drawings, or there's a conflict on the drawings, the architect's going to kind of try to hide the fact that they made a mistake,
Hmm.
and they're going to advocate for approving the change order, right? And it might be uh, not the general contractor's fault, and he is due a change order, but maybe the owner needs somebody to get the architect to pay for that cost, which I've done many times. I mean, there's been a lot of instances where, relatively big change orders, 50,000. I even had one that was $600,000 that was a design discrepancy through approval of a substitution on some mechanical equipment that led to a huge problem on a project. So, you're the guy that gets to advise the owner on what course of action to take, not only during construction, but in what I feel like is the most important stage of construction, and that's before you ever put a shovel in the ground. Um, and you need to be able to review the drawings, vet the drawings, interview contractors that are qualified, and choose the right contractor, choose the right design team. And in a lot of cases, I'm tasked with that. Um, and avoid some of the common mistakes that developers can make, right?
Yep.
They have a neighbor and this happens to me all the time. Neighbor's a contractor. Okay. Well, does he build you know, cast in mid-rise structure, which is what we're doing. We're doing a mid-rise in Florida, let's say, an 8-story PT structure. How many of those has he done? Well, he just does wood frame. Okay, he's not qualified. Well, what do you mean? He does big projects. Yeah, well, he's not qualified, so owners get in this that don't have a lot of construction experience, and quite honestly, most of them don't unless they have in-house construction expertise. Um, they don't get that you shouldn't hire a brain surgeon to do heart surgery, right? Or vice versa. And
Yeah.
that's what construction is, right? There's guys that know how to do certain types of buildings, and there's guys that are really good at doing other types of buildings, and you have to hire the right guys. And that's the biggest part of my job, is probably because I go into a lot of markets that I really I know nobody in the
Hmm.
market, and I spend a lot of time making sure I give the project the best opportunity for success. And that's really at the heart of what I do. And you avoid a lot of bad things when you do your homework up front. I'm happy to say that in my 40 years of construction and building projects, anywhere from $4 million. Of course, back in the late '80s, $4 million is like $40 million now. But
Right.
$4 million up to $120 million. I have only had 2 lawsuits on any of my projects.
Mm.
So, and I've settled a lot of lawsuits that on projects that I've been hired midstream to when another construction manager or owner's rep was fired, and I've been hired for a few projects to go back in, pick up the pieces, get the project back on track, and get it finished on time. So, um, you know, if you've got the right team, you start with the right team, um, and everybody's got clear direction from the start on what your expectations are. You've got a really good chance for a successful project.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, I love that you're emphasizing how a project should be started up right before it actually goes into contract, because that's the owner's opportunity really to make that's the opportunity that they can that they have to use the leverage that they have at that point in time, right? Because once contract
Yeah.
is in place, then like you said, contractors are looking for change orders left, right, and
Yeah.
center, and so um I really like that you emphasize that, and it sounds like you've got a lot of experience under your belt and good history record. I do like to also think of, once construction is going or design is going, I like to think of an owner's rep as someone who's also like kind of like a traffic operator, if you will, to make sure that people are stopping when they need to, or people are going when the
Yeah.
green light needs to go. There's also that function of it, just making sure there's the facilitation of coordination, right? Um,
Yeah,
so
and it's a good point. I like to be the guy that's driving the bus.
yep.
I like to be the guy that I don't know if providing leadership is the right term, but it's just keeping everybody in their lanes and
Yep.
keeping everything moving. And with experience comes cautionary um thought processes, like, right, you remember what went wrong on a project, or an
Yeah.
approval that you didn't get, that you needed, that just never came up on the radar,
Yep.
or a fee, or an impact fee. We do a lot of work in Florida, and sometimes it's difficult to navigate through all the different impact fees that have to be paid, because every town is different, and there
Mhm.
there isn't one person that um, you know tells you what to do, tells you where to go. And, you could easily miss an impact fee that's $500,000 or $700,000. And that's a pretty big impact to the project. I like to be in a world where people kind of don't like to be accountable for anything. When I take on a project, I want the ball in my court. I want to be accountable. I want to be able to offer my opinion and recommendations to the owner and offer them caution on, look, I've read the geotech report on this site. Before you buy it, just so you know, there's $600,000 of blasting that has to happen on this project. So, um, those are the types of things that, I help with early on and is beneficial to the ownership group. And also one of the things that I don't know that we've talked about before, Billy, is, um, lenders now really like the concept of a third party owner's rep,
Mm-hmm.
working to manage projects for developers, because developers are like everybody else. They try to maximize their profit on a project, with understandable. But sometimes there's a relationship between the developer and the contractor, and that can create conflicts of interest, in my opinion, where if you're wearing your banker's hat, there's a conflict there, right? Okay, because the developer is usually earning a developer's fee or a construction management fee, and then a contractor's earning their fee. And the lenders are sometimes weary of there being sort of a verbal agreement between the two guys on how they're gonna sort of squeeze the most fees out of the deal. And I think, my main clients anyway have expressed to me that it's very beneficial to them when they're in talks with lenders, and the lenders ask them who manages your construction. And when they can tell them it's a third party and it's this guy, here's his resume, they tell me all the time that it's very beneficial for them to have me as a third party, or someone as a third party, to rep their, manage their construction for them. So
Help me understand that a little bit more. So the developer gets their fee, and then the builder gets their fee. But where's can you elaborate a little bit more about where the conflict lies and why it's then beneficial to have a third party owner's rep?
yeah, so lenders have probably been burned on occasion by, some sort of revenue sharing between an owner and a general contractor that they're not aware of,
Mm,
or a profit sharing. For example, an owner may an owner could, and I'm not saying I know of this happening or anything, but these are the types of things that could happen if you start to brainstorm, right? I mean, the owner could, if the owner is agreeing to terms from a bank that maybe doesn't allow a construction management fee, will only allow them to earn a developer fee. Um, they may hire a contractor and say, "Hey, look, put an extra percent on your profit and then share that with us,"
mm,
so they can earn an extra percent. Um, or they'll write in a cost sharing agreement into the contract to make it above board, where anything over this much gets gets shared back with the owner. Now, some projects qualify for, and some banks will allow a construction management fee over top of a developer's fee. So sometimes as much as 2%. I mean, developer fees are usually around 4%
mhm.
in a loan agreement, and then most private projects, they don't allow a CM fee on top of that. But sometimes on a P3 project, or an affordable housing project, perhaps there might be another 2% available as a construction management fee for the developer. So, in those cases, there's there's less opportunity for, they're less likely to collude on, sort of divvying up fees. But it, I don't like to get into the sort of that stuff, but you hear things, and um, you want to make sure what you do is not going to get involved in any hanky panky like that. So
Right, right, right. Okay. Um, I mean, yeah, at the end of the day, like you said, we're really just trying to see um, provide a service that benefits the owner. I mean, it's a self-explanatory term, right? Owner's rep, and I think a lot of owners don't quite, usually don't, like you said, don't have an in-house construction manager or someone, like a whole. It really takes a whole team sometimes. I mean, you have a lot of experience on your belt. I'm sure you have some folks under your team. Um, to help you run projects and things like that. But usually an owner's, especially a smaller owner, won't have their team,
right.
their own construction team, right? I want to go back to a point that you made earlier too, is let's zoom back into Latitude 35. When you go into a new market, how do you navigate, finding new teams and trying to,
Yeah.
make sure that specific owner has the right building team or whatever team that you're putting together? How do you navigate through that? How do you like, can you share your expertise in being able to do that?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and the answer is it's hard to give you an answer, because I've kind of developed these. It first started when I was on working as a VP for a large developer out of Philadelphia, and we were building student housing all over the East Coast, and we would act as our own general contractor. So
Hmm.
I was actually acting as running my portion of the general contractors company. So I would go into a market, like I did a project at James Madison University in Harrisonburg, Virginia, for example, and then right after that at Virginia Tech in Blacksburg. And I went into those markets, which are both very small markets, and did pretty large projects for those markets. And I I had to figure out how to find the subcontractors that I could hire to get our project built, and still make the schedule on time. Both of those projects were, well, the James Madison project was under a very tight time schedule. So,
They always
um,
are.
yeah, it's hard. It's hard to get ones where you have actually have enough time to build them.
Yeah.
But going in there and you develop certain techniques to land you in on the right people. And it's about networking. I mean, you can't do it. Back in the old days, you would pick up the phone book and go through the yellow pages and look for plumbers, right?
Hmm.
Well, you don't do that today anymore, right? There kind of isn't a yellow pages to go to anymore. So, I go to suppliers like, if it's plumbing, you'll go to the plumbing supply house and say, "Hey, got a multifamily project I'm doing. It's 250 units. I need a plumbing contractor can you give me a list of plumbing contractors that are qualified to do those projects, that do them around here?" And those are usually my best resources when I'm looking for subcontractors. Um, Looking for general contractors is very similar. You want to, you're usually you want to create a network of people that you can just talk to. And you can learn a lot in a very short amount of time by talking to people. You can't sort of take it on yourself to mine for the right people, because you'll drive yourself crazy. I mean, just pick up the phone and start talking to people.
Hmm.
Um, um, which is one of the qualities of today's generations. No offense intended to you, Billy, but the younger generation, communication skills, they don't want to talk to people on the phone.
Yeah.
They have a very hard time with it. And that's the best and fastest way to do it, and the best way to get the best information. Because if somebody wants to tell you, stay away from this guy, they don't want to tell you that in an email.
Right.
you know
Right.
they'll
Right.
they'll tell you on the phone, but
Right.
they don't want to send you an email and get set up for a lawsuit, right? So, um but yeah, the best way is just to go into the market, drive around, take some pictures of other construction projects, find projects that are similar to yours, talk to those people, and then find out if they're qualified to do your project at that point in time.
Yeah.
Because the most qualified contractor might have a backlog that's 3 years. I mean, you might not be able to get him.
Right.
You might have to get the second or third best guy. But
Yeah. Love it. No, no, you hit a lot of nails on the head there. I mean, communication, I think, is absolutely key in this industry. Whether you're, just an owner's rep or a contractor, subcontractor, designer, you got to learn how to pick up the phone, right? I feel like I was lucky enough to learn through my jobs. I always tell myself, in my first job, I learned how to write emails. My second job, I learned how to pick up the phone. My
yeah,
third job, I learned how to run meetings, and then now I kind of just know how to do all of that collectively.
yeah, awesome.
So, but yeah, there is that level of intimidation for some reason of picking up the phone, whereas it's so simple if you really think about it. That's the fastest way to get to someone and the easiest way to get as much information as opposed to typing things up, making sure they're clear. So what you're asking them, and then which I've figured out how to do as well. But yeah, picking up the
Yeah,
phone is just
and it's interesting, right? I was on a panel recently for a large general contractor in Florida where they did a really fun thing. They brought a couple of owners reps up to the stage and they had a Q&A session, and they
oh
had
cool.
some pre-planned, like as an owner, what are you looking for in a general contractor, and what are the problems you see happening? It was a really wonderful platform to be able to communicate with these guys, and these young guys that are project managers, and they're in their late 20s, early 30s, and they're doing these complex projects. And, I know when I was just out of college and in my 20s and 30s, I had to learn quickly, and I was thirsty for knowledge. I was a sponge, right? So having resources like bringing, some of us older guys in to be forthcoming with these kids is a wonderful thing for those guys to do. And I told them, I said, look, and they asked, what's the biggest problems you have in today's day and age? And I said, communications.
Hmm.
Communication skills are are very weak. And I've always considered my communication skills weak. And I work on them all the time. But think about this, Billy. In 1986, when I started working in this business, the most the the highest technology item that we had at our disposal was a fax machine. It was the cutting edge technology of the time. We didn't have cell phones yet. There was no internet yet. Lotus 123 was a spreadsheet that had just been invented that
Wow.
no one knew how to use. There was no word processors yet. People still use typewriters. And so, and I always say we were better at communicating then than we are today.
Hmm.
And today we have all these tools. We have these tools like Procore, and we have email, and we have all these communication tools,
Yeah.
and we still, you know you still have to pick up the phone.
Yeah.
All of those things are wonderful tools, and they're if you use them correctly, you can get we used to send bid packages out to subcontractors in the mail, the US mail. you know, so-
Yeah.
or they would come by the office and pick up bid sets. But, today with the tools we have now for bidding, for example, in Procore, you set up a project on Procore in a few keystrokes, and you send that sucker out to bid, and
Right.
it compiles everything for you. Even, I mean, you don't even have to do anything manually anymore. So, um, with all those tools, you still got to learn how to use them and use them effectively. It still starts with your brain and starts with conversations. And, I insist on a weekly meeting with all my owners that are clients of mine.
Hmm.
I insist on, obviously we have weekly OAC meetings on every project. We have weekly design meetings on projects that we're in design on, and it's very, very important that the team um, attends all those meetings and is ready for those meetings. And it's very, very frustrating in the design side because the design team people tend to be uh, less enthused, let's say, about those meetings because maybe they didn't get anything done the past week and they don't want to admit it, or stuff like that. But um,
Well, that's where you step in, right? That's kind of
yeah,
like
and
our
that's when, as an owner's rep, you step in and say, "Hey, look, all right, here's your deadline. You
yeah,
got till next week's meeting to get this task done.
right.
You got to keep the project on track, right?" So yeah, and then trying to keep those people from hiding things from you.
Yeah, yeah.
Something's not going quite right, right? You submitted something to the town, they don't like it. Sometimes they don't want to tell you about that. They want to try to dance around it a little bit. And so it's like, all right, send me the comments from the town. Let's talk about them. Let's work them out.
Mhm.
Um, because I'll have I might have more ideas about how to solve a specific concern than maybe the architect or the engineer have. Having seen some of the things that I've seen over 40 years, you can usually come up with something um, that someone didn't think about. So
Right. Um, I I love that you talked about that whole communication thing and how you said you argued that back in the day, even with the limited amount of technology you had, that the communication is even was better than it is today. It's kind of interesting because I've been thinking about and I've been listening to some just conversations out there, I think on podcasts and such, and with AI nowadays, for example, right? Now that people are have this tool to almost think for them,
yeah,
people don't realize that you still need to have the right critical thinking with what AI is able to give you. You can't just let it think for you. And I feel like it's kind of a similar thing that you've experienced in the past with all these communication tools when they're being rolled out. It's like, no, this doesn't replace what you still need to do, which is communicate with that person directly. It's just a
yeah,
platform to be able to do that. So it's kind of interesting that you've like experienced that yourself, and now I'm kind of seeing it in the upcoming, tools in AI.
yeah. And I think those are great. I think AI is fantastic for every business. I think it's wonderful, but it should be used as a um, to supplement your own knowledge or your own, or
Exactly.
maybe give you an idea to go down a slightly different path to solve a problem that you're working on or something like that. You shouldn't be lazy and just take it and run with whatever AI is telling you to do, because um, it's probably something somebody did somewhere in the
In the
universe
past.
that
Right.
worked for them, but it might not work for you and your specific application, right? So
Right. Cool. I know we kind of had talked a lot about the general industry and kind of what you do. I do want to zoom back in to Latitude 35. So just what kind of projects are you working on nowadays? What projects do you want to work on more? And maybe some of the challenges you're seeing
yeah,
in your line of work. Let's talk about that a
yeah,
little bit.
yeah. Thanks for asking. My s- sort of sweet spot today are projects between 40 million and 150 million dollar range, mostly multifamily projects or mixed use projects. Um, I've done some hospitality projects, some hotels, and I'm talking about this. And I do a lot of student housing. I have historically in the last 15 years done a lot really enjoy those projects because they're very challenging. And that's on the owner's rep side. And I've sort of, as a general contractor, I'm trying to diversify more uh, in building some projects as a general contractor as well, but smaller projects, really under $8 million. Really is I wouldn't want to. I don't want to really do anything larger than that. I'm licensed. I have physical licenses in North Carolina and Florida. Of the ability to get licensed in any of the other southeast states, and really with the Florida license is accepted as a reciprocal license in most states. So, um, um, yeah, I'm looking to grow my client base to more developers that are either looking for owner's rep services in multifamily, or even in my past history, I've done a lot of office buildings, uh, large office upfits, tens of thousands of square feet for Fortune 500 companies. Then those are usually really on tight time frames. Um, um, Retail, I've done a lot of back in the days, strip plazas with large anchor tenants like the J.C. Penney's and the Kmart's and the Walmart's of the world. So I've got pretty extensive, diverse background historically. One area that I'd like to try to get my foot in the door in is data centers. I think data centers are going to start popping up, and there's quite a demand for them. And I think I could really help, you know, manage those with my experience, manage keep those projects moving along and manage get them keep them on time, and including in pre-con, which their hurdles today are infrastructure related more so than town approvals and stuff. They need so much
Mm-hmm.
power.
Yeah.
Finding locations that have the availability for power is what their challenges are. But I have some ideas about that as well. So I'd love to break into that sort of part of the industry if I could. I'm gonna continue to focus mostly between North Carolina and Florida. Although I've done projects in California, I've done projects in Hawaii, been in Chicago, North Dakota, Texas, you know, and then everywhere in the Northeast, New York, New Jersey, Rhode Island, Pennsylvania, all sort of most of the Northeast states as well. So I
Cool.
can have the ability to go anywhere and do anything, and
With today's, technology and the tools that we have, or, you and I can sit in our own, in our own rooms and on
yeah,
different
for the most part.
coasts. Yeah.
For the
I
most
mean,
part,
yeah,
once construction, I like to physically be on site at least twice a month to
yeah,
my projects if they're going well.
right.
If they're not going well, then I'm
Probably
going to
more
be
often
there
than
full
that.
time because
Yeah,
you're gonna straighten up, or I'm going to take it over for you.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, just touching on critical facilities there, are you seeing a lot of, are you seeing the industry trend kind of, are you seeing data centers being built out there in, North Carolina and Florida? I know there's some on the West Coast out here. I think I've seen
Yeah,
some pop up in Chicago, but what's your, you know, pulse
I
on,
I see quite a few announcements for data centers, and the states are really hungry to attract those types of facilities to their states.
yeah,
um yeah, I think New York probably won't land any because they've got a severe lack of power in New York, and probably the same in California.
right,
um Power generation is the biggest hurdle they have, right? And I know I'm having a hard time getting multifamily projects, getting adequate power for those, much less finding power for a data center in New York is probably next to impossible. But in the area where I am, we have plenty of power, and it's just a question of what state can offer the best incentives to build there, just like any other manufacturing plant. I think, and yeah, I know Florida is actively trying to attract, those types of businesses. Um, on the multifamily side, it's been difficult the last couple of years for developers to raise the money for those projects. I don't know. I'm not a finance guy by any means, and I only hear what I hear. But it seems like the banks not just increasing interest rates, but reducing loan to cost, percentages, and then requiring more equity, really kills deals pretty fast. So I know there's a big backlog of multifamily projects that are waiting for the right financial climates to you know fire themselves back up. So
Hmm.
I'm hoping to expand my client base for when that happens. We'll be poised and ready to go.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, Mike, is there anything else that you wanted to touch on here before we wrap up? I know we've had a lot of conversation. We'll probably keep going for another hour or so, but
Yeah,
unfortunately
yeah.
we are out of time. Any last second points that you want to mention or anything?
Not really. I'd love to have the opportunity to speak to some of your viewers, one-to-one basis, if they have a need for my services, or even if they just want to chat.
Yeah,
I'm good at chatting, so
yeah, yeah,
contact me at my email is Mike C at lat35solutions.com, or you can visit my website at lat35solutions.com. And um, you know, just give me a shout. Let's talk.
yeah.
Let's talk about stuff.
Perfect. Yeah, no, yeah. I'll definitely link those in the description below so all of our viewers have access to it. But otherwise, Mike, thank you so much for this incredible conversation. I love that you spoke about, your role as an owner's rep and how accountability, communication, all that stuff was it really, obviously someone who has experience in that as well, it really does hit home. And I think you bring, all your decades of experience to the table, and it sounds like you are one to not only talk the talk but walk the walk, and it'd be very beneficial for owners to get in touch with you for those who happen to come across or know one that needs an owner's rep like yourself. So again, thanks for joining and hope to speak to you soon.
Yeah, sounds good, Billy. Me too. Thank you very much for the opportunity to be on your show. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Mike.
All right.